I remember my dad came home. My dad had just got sober. And my dad said to me, hey, I met this guy at a meeting. I got you a job. You get your ass down there tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. You're getting out of this house and getting a job. And I'm like, okay, I have a college degree. You know, I'm being picky for a year, watching Maury Povich reruns every day on TV and Jerry Springer. I go down there at 6 a.m. I walk in, I said, hey, my name's Ed Mylett. I'm here for the job. They're like, what job? I remember this vividly, right? And I'm like, I don't know. They just told me you'd know. And they go, well, we have no idea who you are and we don't know what the job is. They said, do you know who's hiring you? I said, I don't remember. And they go, well, then you need to come back. And I go to the door and I go, wait a minute, his name's Tim. They're like, there's a lot of Tims. And I go, well, I know he must be an alcoholic because he was at a meeting with my dad last night. They go, oh, drunk Tim, we know Tim, right? And where I was a place called McKinley Home for Boys. It was a group home, a campus of group homes. All my boys were wards of the court. They were removed from their family either because their parents were incarcerated, killed, or were molesting them. And I ended up in Cottage 8. Cottage 8, I had 12 boys. They were 7 to 10 years old. And I walked through that door that morning, not even knowing what the job was, and it transformed my life. I mean, in an instant, brother. I just saw these eyes, these little boys, and they just wanted someone to love them and believe in them and care about them. And I'd have this big belief that people that go through any dysfunction in their family or abuse as a kid, I think our eyes are different. We just have these different eyes, man. And so I could connect with these guys. Mine wasn't as severe as theirs, but I knew what it was like to have that kind of anxiety and that kind of stress and that kind of pressure put on you as a little boy. And I became like their father. I was there with them on Christmas and Halloween and their birthdays, and I lived with them. And it changed my world because in that instant, I went from being this athlete who was ego, recognition, significance, gonna get rich, it's all about me. Always when you're a good athlete, you knew this growing up, it was always accolades. All of a sudden in that instant, it became about serving people, making a difference. And I'm like, oh, this is what makes me happy. Oh, I was actually born to serve and help people. Crazy. No one, that never happened playing baseball. And while I worked there, 2 years into it, the financial business that I'm in came along. And I started in it part-time, and I was the rare young businessman who approached the business world from a place of service and giving and not making money. And ironically, the more I served people, the more I made a difference, the more I contributed, the more I was rewarded financially. I didn't do it for that reason, but that's what happened. So that's how I got into the business, was actually, and again, everything, my dad wasn't an alcoholic. He's not at that meeting. I don't get that job. And if it wasn't an alcoholic, I wouldn't have connected with those boys. So all of that in hindsight happened for me, right? And had I met the financial business before that, I'd have flown out of it. I'd have been about ego, making money, and when that didn't happen, I'd have left. Yeah. And so it all happened in the right sequence.
Wow. Life qualified you. We just talked about
I love how you say that. I'd never heard someone say that. It's so powerful and true.
Yeah, you know what? Full disclosure, you know, this is why I wanted to have you on the show to talk about this. I mean, you have a couple $100 million worth, right? Mm-hmm. And to come from where you came from, there were a process. It wasn't all sunshine and roses once you made this decision. Sure. So let's talk about the early days, right? I know some things happened, maybe some lights got cut off or something like that. Like you went through stuff, yes. Again, life qualifying you. And so now you even have a different perspective about, I mean, even I started the show just saying how beautiful your home is. I mean, this is absolutely gorgeous and just amazing, but it's not about the house for you.
No. Well, no, and like any entrepreneur, there's a lot of people out there listening to this that are starting a business, and I would say entrepreneurism is the best self-awareness program in the history of the world, because you're gonna learn a lot about yourself. When you start a business, you're gonna learn how resilient you are, how tough you are, how you deal with adversity. It's a self-improvement program with a big compensation package attached. It's gonna require you to improve in order to go get what you want, right? And I'm believing in both those things. But like most entrepreneurs, I'd get it going and then it would come backwards. I'd get my business growing, it would come backwards. And so I had huge financial adversities, and like embarrassing ones, like shameful ones. Like Christiane and I just first got married, and I remember thinking, man, the power got turned off, our phones got turned off. She goes out to work one day and I'm like, she goes, my car got stolen. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Now a car gets stolen, what's going on, right? Except it wasn't stolen, it was repoed. So then it was even worse. Then about 2 weeks after that, the water got turned off. You could have everything turned off. I've said this before. You have your power turned off, the lights, you could function. You get water turned off in your place. You can't bathe, you can't brush your teeth, you can't cook. Water's the worst thing, right? And so we would have to get up in the morning, newly married, total shameful as a man, I couldn't provide. We're living in this apartment. We'd have to walk down the stairs, freezing cold, and we would shower at our pool's outdoor shower. And I'd just protect her and let her be covered, and just the shame of us brushing our teeth down there and then having to go out into the world and go, I'm gonna win. We're going to change the world, right? And so I always tell people to this day, it's a great, we're looking at it right now. There's this beautiful Pacific Ocean out there. It's a great blessing. And I look at it every day. Honestly, I wake up and like, I cannot believe we're here sometimes. But a lot of mornings, brother, candidly, not every morning, but many mornings, when I pull that shower and the water comes out, instant gratitude. Just to this day, it was so shameful and so painful that just when I see water come out of the faucet and hit me, I feel grateful. And it's just from those days of being without it. So
this is why I wanted to have you on, man, is that there's also this groundedness. You know, you've achieved a lot of success. But I think that there are some basic principles that people look past, like gratitude.
Huge.
Like, this is actually, so let's talk about this.
Okay.
I wasn't planning on talking about this with you
Sure.
because there's something very specific I want to get to, but
Okay.
where does gratitude come into play? I mean, it sounds very kind of airy-fairy, so.
It's airy-fairy to everybody. Gratitude is the antidote to almost everything negative in your life. Gratitude is, if it's not, love's the most powerful emotion, but gratitude is the emotion that will deliver you the most joy in your life. I'm just telling you. And so I'm constantly taking inventory of what I'm grateful for, small and big things. I'm a gratitude addict because the normal human being and my normal proclivity is to worry, is to stress. I was grown up because of the going on around me. I was wired to be a warrior. Is dad coming home? What if mom and dad are fighting? You know, what's the environment going to be like? What's dad's state going to be when he gets home? You know, and so I grew up worrying all the time. So as I got older, the antidote to that was being grateful. And so I'm constantly trying to seek things out I'm grateful for. I mean, small and big things. I mean, like, it sounds hokey, but like, I have this experience, humans have it, like sometimes just the wind, man, just hitting you the right way. It's like, man, thank you, Lord, right? So I'm constantly trying to find things that I'm grateful for because your mind goes to work on finding the things you want it to find. And for me, I want it to find stuff I'm grateful for. And the more successful you become, that's why so many successful people are so unhappy. It's the next material thing. And what most people think is, here's what they think, I'll be happy when. It's the most common human condition. I will let myself feel gratitude and happiness when I find the right person relationship, when I get a certain amount of money, when I buy that car, when I buy that home, when I get that promotion. So they delay their happiness until never arrives. It never shows up. So I always talk about being blissfully dissatisfied, learning to live blissfully, being happy, but dissatisfied with where you are. There's no relationship between being dissatisfied and unhappy. You can be happy and still dissatisfied at the same time. And so happiness to me is gratitude. So I'm constantly trying to find things like just you being here today and getting to know you. It's like, I'm grateful for this time. Your beautiful wife. It's like, what a wonderful way to spend a day. What a wonderful experience. Like, I'm grateful for that. And I make sure I remind myself. When I interviewed you earlier today, right? And I remember in the middle of the interview just going, I'm so grateful for this man. I'm just so grateful he's here, you know? And so I'm constantly seeking anything I can find that I'm grateful for because it makes me happy. Why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Now let's talk about some of the principles, you know, because you go in that situation where, you know, again, water being turned off, really struggling with, and man, I mean, I can really identify with this, you know, and how it even impacts your manhood, you know, and just the ideas that we carry.
It's shameful.
But going from that place to achieving the success that you have, what are like one or two principles, like changes in your psychology that must have taken place?
Two musts. I'll give you the two huge musts for me. One was my self-confidence. I grew up not a very self-confident person. And so you have to have high self-confidence. Any world-class athlete, you and I both know, their self-confidence level is through the roof. And when they go in a slump, when they're not performing well, what's going on? They've lost their confidence. They haven't lost their ability to shoot or hit a ball or hit a golf ball. They've lost their confidence. They've lost their swag. So where's confidence come from? Like, I knew I had to become more confident. Confidence comes from this, because the disease of lack of confidence is you're obsessed with everybody else thinks about you. What are they going to think? What are they going to think? What are they going to think? That's the symptom. The disease is you're worried about your reputation with everybody else because you don't have a good one with you. If your reputation with self is exemplary, you're not concerned about your reputation with others. So self-confidence comes from one simple thing. It comes from keeping the promises you make to yourself. That's it. If you begin to consistently keep the promises you make to you, you will begin to stack upon that self-confidence. And so I set up my life where I started to keep promises I made to me, whether that was what time I got up in the morning, what I put in my mouth to eat, when I trained and worked out. I can't control outcomes, but I can control activity. So in my business life, I'm going to make 15 phone calls today. I'd make my 15, and I'd be conscious of saying, I did what I said I was going to do. I did what I said I was going to do. And through that process, over a period of time, every day, every hour that went by, I kept keeping more and more promises to me. I began to trust me. My self-confidence level transformed. That was number one. Second thing was my identity. You'll never exceed in your life what you think you're worth. Everyone talks about this, but you'll never exceed your identity any time in your life. And your identity is your self-worth, what you believe you deserve. Okay, now, self-worth and identity is like a thermostat. It sits on the wall of your life. It sets the entire temperature for your life. So in every area, you have a spiritual thermostat, a financial, a business, a physical one, a wellness one. So if that thermostat is set at, let's say financially, at 80 degrees, it's set at 80 degrees, no matter what you do, you've already experienced it. If you start to heat your life up, you start having abundance come into it, and you're doing activities that are better, but you haven't changed your identity, you will find a way to cool your life right back down to where your identity is eventually. You'll make a bad investment decision, a car will break down, it'll all seem unconscious, but you will get back to 80 degrees of money. Okay? The reverse is also true. You start to go broke, your car gets repoed, the water gets turned off, you find a way to heat it back up and get it back to 80 degrees again. So the key in life is to have self-confidence and change that thermostat level of what you think you're worth. You could be in the best business model with the best opportunity, the best products, the best everything, and you will not exceed 80 degrees of identity if that's your identity in your life. Happiness has an identity. Faith has an identity. And so the key thing is, how do you shift that identity, right? And that identity then is shifted through a couple things, but the biggest one is associations. Biggest way we change your identity, if let's say you hung around a guy worth a couple $100 million. If I'm a 150 degreer financially and you're an 80 degreer, through proximity over time, I will heat you up somewhere in between the two of us. If your faith, if you have you struggle with your faith or your relationships, but you surround yourself with people that have great faith or great marriages, through association, yours improve. So the biggest way I change my identity is through who I hung around. Hanging around, lastly, is also, I don't have to physically be around you. I can read your book. I can read a book from you on health, on sleep. And when I read that book, I'm not just reading pages, I'm pretending as if I'm with you. I'm associating with you. And so a lot of my identity shifts came from books I read and things I listened to and people that were live in my life at the same time. That's how I changed it.